Hello, this is Tony Heller from RealClimateScience.com. Jeff Masters at Yale Climate Connections made the astonishing claim that the heat wave in the Pacific Northwest last summer was the most extreme heat wave in world history. According to Herrera, more all-time heat records were broken by at least 5 degrees Celsius during the heat wave than in the previous 85-plus years of world weather record-keeping going back to 1936, when the hottest summer in U.S. history brought the previous most extreme heat wave in world history. It's worth noting that the record North American heat of the 1930s, including 1936, was largely connected to the Dust Bowl, in which parts of a multi-year drought were amplified by overplowed, denuded soil across the Great Plains, an example of human-induced climate change itself. Let's take a look at these claims to see if they're accurate. The red dots on this map show all the stations in the United States which reached 110 degrees Fahrenheit during the year 2021. They were confined to the desert Southwest and the Pacific coast. The heat was due to high pressure over southern Canada and downslope winds which heated the air. This is somewhat like June 17, 1859, when downslope winds in Southern California heated up Santa Barbara to an incredible 133 degrees Fahrenheit. That was much hotter than any temperatures associated with the 2021 heat wave, and it was associated with the largest solar storm ever recorded, which brought the northern lights almost to the equator. Now let's compare the Pacific Northwest heat wave of 2021 with the one from 1898. No states broke their all-time temperature record in 2021, but in 1898 Oregon did. Oregon reached 119 degrees Fahrenheit twice during the summer of 1898. The hottest temperature recorded this year in Oregon was 118 degrees, which was a degree cooler. There isn't a lot of data available from 1898, but Prineville, Oregon got up to 119 degrees Fahrenheit, and Kennewick, Washington got up to 115. This year, neither of those places got as hot as they did in 1898. So it's pretty likely that the 1898 heat wave was as hot or hotter than the one last year. 1898 also brought some of the largest wildfires in U.S. history. During February of 1898, 3 million acres of forest in South Carolina burned up in just a few hours. 1898 also brought the largest forest fires in Colorado history. There were terrible fires burning in Wisconsin, California, and many other parts of the country that same year. Now let's look at the actual worst heat wave in U.S. history, which was the summer of 1936. All of these red dots were places which reached 110 degrees Fahrenheit during the summer of 1936. The heat wave of 1936 was vastly larger than 2021. In 2021, there was a very small region which got above 110 degrees Fahrenheit. The heat wave of 1936 covered almost the entire United States. Yale University tried to blame the heat wave of 1936 on farmers in the Dust Bowl region. But this is ridiculous. The Dust Bowl covered a very small area around the Oklahoma Panhandle, but the heat wave covered almost the entire country. These farmers were victims of the heat and drought, not the cause of it. Let's look at one day, July 10, 1936, when Baltimore got over 107 degrees Fahrenheit. Almost the entire eastern two-thirds of the United States was over 100 degrees that day. There wasn't any weather even remotely comparable to that last year. One of the most disturbing things about this ridiculous claim from Yale University is that it involved Christopher Burt, author of the book Extreme Weather. I've got that book, and he described in great detail the heat wave of 1936. I'm not going to read his description to you, but you can find it on my website, RealClimateScience.com. If you read through it, you can see that Christopher Burt knows all about the heat wave of 1936, and he probably knows that his claims this year were complete nonsense. In 1936, 10% of afternoon temperatures recorded in the United States were over 95 degrees Fahrenheit or 35 degrees Celsius. Last year was below average and was less than half of 1936. The percentage of U.S. stations reaching 95 degrees Fahrenheit sometime during the year peaked in 1931, and last year was well below average. There are 647 United States Historical Climatology Network stations which have records spanning at least 100 years. About one-fourth of those stations set their all-time maximum temperature record in 1936, but last year there was only about 30 all-time temperature records set. It was reported in 1936 that 12,000 people died in the heat wave in just 1 week. And if we go back 100 years to 1921, millions of people faced death from the record heat wave and drought. Heat waves in 1911 killed thousands of people in New England and more than 40,000 people in Paris. During the summer of 1896, a 10-day heat wave killed nearly 1,500 people in New York City. The heat waves and drought of 1876 to 1879 killed 10 million people in India and 20 million people in China. And if we go back further in history, we can see that there's been terrible heat waves and drought in Europe over the past 1,500 years. I'm not going to read these here, but you can view them yourself on my website. There was also a terrible heat wave in 1947, but experts were much more honest then than they are now. Think weather is getting warmer every year? Expert blames childhood memories. Washington, August 22, 1947. The old time-honored remark that the weather is getting warmer every year was roundly denounced today by the U.S. Weather Bureau, which blames the misconception on human nature. G.C. Bristow, a Bureau climatic expert, declared that the weather is just about the same as it's always been, and said the whole thing stems from childhood memories. And I'm guessing there probably aren't a lot of people still around who remember when the Arctic was ice-free 6,000 years ago. These claims from climate experts are getting more and more ridiculous. They think they can get away with spewing misinformation because they know the press won't call them out on it. But Toto has no interest in letting them get away with it. You can visit him, Curie, and Caesar on the web at realclimatescience.com.